I want to start with something I find genuinely hard to admit. A few months ago, I was going through something with a close friend, nothing dramatic, just one of those slow drifts where you can feel the distance growing and you're not quite sure who moved or when. And instead of calling them, I opened my laptop and talked to AI about it for maybe 30 minutes. And at the end of those 30 minutes, I felt clearer and more settled, like I would work something out. So I closed my laptop, went back to my evening, and didn't call my friend. It wasn't until a few days later that I realized I hadn't actually done anything. I felt the relief of being heard without anyone hearing me. I processed the distance without closing it. That's what I want to talk about today. The part we don't admit. Here is something I think is true but rarely gets said honestly. Talking to AI doesn't just feel convenient. Sometimes it feels better than talking to a person. You can say the thing without worrying how it lands, without the history and without the 3 day aftermath of a conversation that went slightly sideways. You can be completely honest and nothing changed between you and anyone. I don't think that appeal is shallow. I think it's pointing at something real, which is that real conversations with real people are genuinely hard. Not always, but often. There is so much happening underneath the words. Who is in a good mood? Who is distracted? Who needs something from you right now? And whether this is the right moment, whether you're saying it well, and it's a lot to navigate. And most of us have learned without quite deciding to that it's easier to just not. So when something comes that remove all those friction, of course it feels relief. The question is what we are actually being relieved of. What AI is walking into. AI didn't create this problem, it's walked into a gap that was already there. Think about the conversations you don't have. Not because you don't want to, but because you have done the quiet math. You know how these friends gets when things get heavy and this one will make it about themselves, or that with this person you will spend more energy managing their reactions than actually saying what you needed to say. So you say a smaller version of it or you wait for a moment that never quite comes. That experience of having something real to carry and nowhere that feels safe enough to put it is more common than we talk about. And into that gap, AI arrived offering something genuinely new. Available at 2 in the morning, no agenda, no history, and no chance of being judged. For some people, that's been enough to say things they've never said out loud before. And I think that's important. I don't want to dismiss it. But I also think we need to be honest about what comes after. What actually gets lost. When someone who loves you, understands you, really follows you through something hard, it costs them something. They had to set aside their own noise, stay with something uncomfortable, resist the urge to fix it or redirect it or make it easier. That cost is not incidental. That cost is part of what makes it mean something. Being understood by a person leaves a mark on the relationship. It becomes part of a shared history between you. It's likely it changes who you are to each other. AI doesn't have any of that. There is no history, no stake, nothing it's risking or offering or carrying afterward. It produces the shape of understanding, it follows you, reflects you, and it says maybe the right things without any of the substance underneath. And the uncomfortable truth is that this is often enough to make us feel better, which means we get the relief without the thing that actually builds something. And here's the part that worries me most, not as a warning, as something I've noticed. When you process something with AI before you bring it to a person, you arrive already resolved. The rough edges are gone. The vulnerability that would have made the exchange real has already been spent somewhere else. And that person gets the clean version of you, which probably feels easier for both of you. But they never had to meet you in the middle of it. They never got to be the one who helped. And slowly, over time, the intimacy that comes from being witnessed when you're not yet figured out, from someone sitting with you in the mess of it, gets rarer. Just because friction kept getting quietly rooted around. The skill that quietly goes away. There's something else worth naming, and it's more practical than it sounds. Real conversations require a specific kind of tolerance. The tolerance for not knowing how someone will respond, for being misunderstood and staying it in any way. Those are capacities and they need to be used to stay strong. AI conversations don't require any of that. Nothing goes wrong in the way that real things go wrong and then have to be repaired. And that repair, the experience of something breaking slightly between you and another person, then being mended, is actually one of the main ways intimacy depends. You don't get what's from a conversation with no stakes. I think there's a muscle here that atrophies quietly without you noticing, until one day a real conversation feels harder than it used to, and you cannot quite remember when that started. The moment I keep coming back to. I want to go back to that night with my friend. What I didn't do, what I rooted around, was a conversation that might have been uncomfortable, that might have gone wrong before it went right, that might have asked something of both of us. Instead, I spent 30 minutes feeling hurt by something that wasn't actually hurting me, and arrive at the other side feeling resolved about something I hadn't actually resolved. My friend still doesn't know that period was hard for me, not because I decided to hide it, because by the time the urgency was gone and we moved on, and the friendship stayed maybe exactly where it was. What I'm not saying use or do not use AI. I use it. It can be a genuinely useful place to think something through or to find words for something that doesn't have them yet. But I think there is a question worth asking yourself honestly, especially if you have been reaching for it often. The question is not, is this useful? But the question is, what am I choosing not to do instead? Because sometimes the answer is fine. Sometimes you genuinely just need to think something through before you can bring it to anyone. But sometimes the answer is, there's a conversation I have been putting off, a person I have been slightly less present with, something I have been processing in a way that never requires me to be vulnerable with anyone real. And that something is still there, still waiting, just quieter now, because you found a way to feel better about it. Close. Being known by another person, really known over time through the hard conversations and the repairs and the moments where you showed up imperfectly and they stayed anyway. That's something you cannot replicate. It takes longer, it goes wrong more often, it asks more of you, but it's also the thing that actually changes you, that leaves something real behind, that makes you feel on the other side of it less alone in a way that lasts. So here's the question I want to leave with you. Is there a conversation you have been having with AI that you actually need to have with someone? You probably already know the answer.